In this episode on OKTV Today YouTube channel, you'll get to see every latest episode from Yellowstone, Earth Abide, Sistas, Special Ops Lioness, Landman, and so much more, all coming up next on this video. Number 9.
Go inside before you get hurt. Mom! Yeah. How'd you know?
Pointing like weeds.
Like a fungus?
Top of this list is Special Ops Lioness Season 2 Episode 7 The Devil Has Aces. In Episode 7 of Season 2 of Lioness. To talk about his plan, Morgan Freeman pays Byron, Michael Kelly a visit at his house. Byron thinks the suicide bombers were Iranian-Chinese counterintelligence, therefore he wants to discover why they were at the border. In addition, he believes there is supposed nuclear activity between the two countries in Tehran and that there is a plot to destabilize the border in order to sway the election. Mullen informs Byron that the enemy has arrived at the gate and that they must force it to close. It is now time to launch an attack. Mullen promises Byron that he will be the one to jump on the grenade for this when the time comes, but he advises him not to ask for formal clearance until after the mission has begun. Even though Zoe Saldana destiny was left up in the air in the previous episode, we can see that she is recovering from the wound, which was caused by a piece of her cell phone rather than a gunshot. But Jo has to rest for a week in order to have the procedure to rescue her. What if that's not possible because of her job? Jo wonders. Just make sure she thinks before doing anything that could potentially reopen the wound, the doctor advises. Jo is accompanied by Neil, played by Dave Annable, to listen to everything. Jo apologizes for phoning him when she believed she was dying, but Neil is furious and declares that if Jo dies while performing his job, it will also kill him. Jo is unwilling to listen to it. In light of the fact that she took an oath to her nation before her marriage to him, he must either harden up or get a divorce. She has yet to find her escape, but she is still searching. Byron later visits Jo to speak. Assuming that the ambush at the border was an attempt to safeguard a foreign asset rather than merely transport migrants across the border, Jo provides him with further information about it. Byron informs her that she will lead the expedition from Langley, but they will be going on the attack. She controls how her team is managed, therefore Jo won't have it. However, Jo isn't disposable, whereas her crew is, as Byron reminds her. After Caitlin, Nicole Kidman, Kyle, Thad Luckenbill, and the other members of the squad meet up in Dallas, they take Guy Terres, Kirk Acevedo to the safe house where Pablo Carrillo, Demian Castro is being held. They need to ask some questions. Caitlin speaks with Pablo's maid, Sophie Calderon, as Kyle connects Guy Terres to a polygraph machine. Following a series of introductory inquiries, Kyle presses Guy Terres on the subject of whether he has ever received a cash offer from a criminal organization or a representative of one. Guy Terres acknowledges that he has, but he declined the money. Kyle inquires as to why he chose not to notify his superiors or another organization about the offer. Guy Terres will not respond until he is certain that his response will remain in the room. However, he ultimately comes clean when Kyle threatens to kill Guy Terres if he doesn't respond. Because the individual who gave him the money was another D agent who Guy Terres killed, he chose not to disclose the payment. Despite all this, Guy Terres remains devoted to what he refers to as a lost cause, complaining that despite their best efforts, they are unable to disrupt the cartel's operations, mostly because of their ability to penetrate every level of the US, which allows them to get over the barriers that stand in their way. Do you really think the CIA can come in and fix the problem so easily? He says. Guy Terres is telling the truth, Kyle tells Caitlin. His story was also supported by the maid. What are they going to do now? They make the decision to relocate Pablo to a Costa Rican black site before getting back together in Langley. Kyle observes that Pablo has never once inquired about the purpose of this while flying him to Costa Rica. Caitlin then approaches Guy Terres for a conversation. He remarks that he now understands that once the CIA has their target in sight, they don't hold back. The issue is that the cartel is undoubtedly aware of what is happening. According to her, that may work in their favor by making the cartel behave reactively. She gives Guy Terres his phone and rifle back after deciding they are once again on the same team after staring him down. Cruz, Leisla de Oliveira has Josefina, Genesis Rodriguez remain at her base home as they await further orders. They get closer, both physically and emotionally, and Josefina believes Cruz might be able to temporarily ease her guilt and humiliation. However, Bobby, Jilly Wagner and the rest of the crew arrive before they can proceed. They choose to crash at cruises because the base does not have housing ready for them. Even if they are aware that they disrupted anything, they ignore it. Cruz assures Josefina that it's acceptable for her to lie on the bed with her when they share a room that night. Josefina questions whether she is to blame for the mission's termination. Cruz tells her no. Instead of intervening, she ought to have waited to see whether Josefina might have managed to resolve her father's situation. Joe is visited in the hospital by Caitlin. Following their argument over the mission's shortcomings, Caitlin is angry that Joe led the crew into that ambush, and Joe raises her concerns about the mission's design. Caitlin asks when Joe can be prepared, pointing out that they need a new objective. Joe tells her that she's ready to leave now. As seen by his treatment of Joe when he brings her home, Neil would not concur with that. She refuses to let him help her out of the car. In order to save Joe from having to go upstairs, she discovers that Neil had a hospital bed placed in the living room. She goes upstairs to shower, defying Joe's assertion that he is her husband and not her doctor. As soon as Joe exits, Neil enters, irritated that a car is waiting outside to drive him to work. She interrupts him before he can make his point, which is that Joe cannot be obstinate about the health dangers. She tells him about their youngest daughter, who was kidnapped and sold into slavery, and how she saw a suicide bomber set off a bomb and murder the child in front of her. After that, she won't sleep and she can't. Making sure it doesn't happen again is her goal. As Joe gets to Langley, Byron and Caitlin are being briefed about 2 Chinese scientists who are about to be sent to Iran, most likely to assist with their nuclear program. According to Byron, the scientists' transportation in Iran is part of their new mission to demonstrate to China and Iran the extent of US might. Josefina is going to fly Joe's squad in to carry out the strike. Joe demands she accompany them. Byron instructs her to watch and counsel solely, but Caitlin advises her to be aware of her boundaries and avoid being a liability. Caitlin will travel to Costa Rica to handle the Carrillo matter in the interim. Cruz and Josefina are alerted of the new assignment when they wake up the next morning, interrupting another precious moment. Joe greets them as they arrive at the airport and warns them that things will get fiery. Josefina questions Joe about her involvement in this situation. Josefina will have the opportunity to save the day by demonstrating her true flying prowess. Joe phones Neil before takeoff, and Neil soon realizes she is going to board an aircraft for a new assignment. He queries what he should say to their girls in the event that she passes away from her wounds or from any other threat that may arise. In the end, Joe claims he can tell them anything he wants. Before hurling his phone and cutting the call short, Neil, furious, says she must determine if she will ever be able to prioritize her kids as they should be if Joe does return home. As she boards the aircraft, it's not the farewell Joe desired. Number 8.
What are you doing? This is a lesson. We're not willing to accept.
Cobra Kai Season 6 Episode 10 Eunjangdo. Miyagi-Do defeated Cobra Kai in the end of Episode 9, and Robbie defeated Quan to claim the last point. After Kreese is eliminated from the tournament, Johnny bids them farewell, but there is still the matter of Silver to deal with. However, he has completed his homework, and Silver gives Daniel a letter that contains information on Miyagi's background. It's the record set by Sekai Taikai during Miyagi's competition. As it happens, he murdered his opponent. As Cobra Kai Season 6 Episode 10 opens, Miyagi's last battle unfolds as a vision, with Daniel taking on the role of Miyagi's opponent before killing him. Startled, Daniel awakens in bed. The outcomes appear to be genuine, but Daniel's determination is damaged when he is shocked by the guy he thought was above him. Chosen and Johnny are both aware of it, but there is still more drama here, and it centers on the event itself.
Has a long and honorable by cheating. Have tested positive for performance. And remove me yourself.
That means
We'll now announce the drawers for Sarah Malik. The semi-final match will pit or at the venue.
You got this. Sensei Chosen's right.
What?
Go get changed. Must pull heads out of axis.
The kiss between Robbie and Zara, as well as the attempted kiss between Axel and Sam on the beach, are among the interpersonal problems that remain unaddressed. Robbie is attempting to speak with Tori when Kwon arrives and confronts him, pointing out that he was fortunate. This rivalry has not ended yet. Kim finds it difficult to handle the internal strife in Cobra Kai that is aimed against Tori. Regarding Kreese, he has unresolved problems with Silver. He finds him and waits for a good moment to attack him with a knife he has in his luggage. But for a major announcement, all of the rivals are summoned into the main lobby. A cheating squad has been uncovered by the Sekai Taikai. They were found guilty of using performance-enhancing substances, and it's the Russians. Consequently, Cobra Kai has returned. Axel and Robbie will face each other, while Sam and Tori will face each other in the semi-finals.
Waiting for my final round of the sounds with
For you. It's not for nothing. Semi-finalists.
Cheers.
You butterflies?
Just.
Cobra Kai, along with the first leg of Iron Dragons.
Her fist. Not focused 100%. You risk winning. Over everything else. Discipline. Sacrifice.
This implies that Kwon vs Robbie may really wind up being a rematch in the championship bout. Tori, on the other hand, is not focused and is not willing to sacrifice all for the purpose of winning. However, Kim makes every effort to persuade her otherwise. The Miyagi do a shambles while Cobra Kai exercises. Until Miguel offers a motivational speech and brings the group back into focus. When the semi-finals begin, Kwon wins, and by a significant margin. Zara triumphs as well, setting up Robbie versus Axel. Because of his precise power, Axel even gets Robbie to spew blood. He takes a 5-0 lead with equally excellent defense. But in the end, everything culminates in the Russian sensei coming back and shocking everyone by defeating the host and starting a full-scale conflict in the dojo. Kreese spots Silver on the opposite side of the dojo and pursues him when he seizes the chance presented by the pandemonium.
No mistake. Just... It's gonna be okay, Mom. More fun than the other. Out of my way, asshole.
On the mat, Wolf fights with Daniel and Johnny, at least until Johnny spots Kreese and chooses to follow. Sadly, he fumbled his knife, and it was picked up by someone else. The friendship between Robbie and Tori, the conflict between Sam and Tori, and Axel's rescuing of Sam in the most critical moment are all resolved on the mat. Throughout it all, Silver and Kreese battle it out, with Silver winning. Until Johnny intervenes and saves him, anyhow. Despite their battle, Johnny prevails. Sadly, Kwon is the one who locates the knife before everyone else. Daniel sees him picking it up. The problem is that Kwon falls on that same knife, and the combat pauses as the blood drips out. The terrible reality is known to everybody. Kwon is the victim of yet another death in the Sekai Taikai. Regarding this episode, Kwon's passing will shock the other dojos, and I can only picture how Axel must feel after delivering the last kick that caused Kwon to fall onto the knife.
Kwon?
Number 7.
The money is missing, Blaze. God,
Why would painfully insecure to everyone, really? You will hand out the bids, we will move the pledge ceremony.
Number 7. Cruel Intentions Season 1 Episode 8 Theta. The news of Lucien's antics spreads around campus at the start of Cruel Intentions' 8th episode. Apparently, until the publication of this particular film, all those years of having sex with women and developing a reputation as a womanizer had gone unnoticed. Despite her understandable disappointment, Annie's perception of Beatrice remains unchanged. It was hard to attempt to bring this up, Beatrice says after going to her room. Being sex positive and aware that Lucien is not to blame, Beatrice does not feel deceived by it. She has main character syndrome and understands that someone else is responsible, thinking it's retaliation against her, an act by Alpha Gamma to further the misogynistic culture. While Lucian is the talk of Alpha Gamma, Caroline is prepared to step up her efforts to support Annie and get her into the sorority. Even though everyone should already be aware of his personality, they all give him back pats and high fives.
What the fuck did you do?
Then you said you didn't want to.
Fuck's sake!
Fire's in. Oh. It's not my fault they didn't like it.
What do you mean? I'm always here.
We're doing things that would warrant a cold shoulder, but
Anything to make you feel uncomfortable.
no. Months away from graduation, and we didn't even.
Do absolutely nothing.
You are all the victims of this, not me. Boo.
I'm not here to defend Lucian, but it wasn't the system who humiliated.
Lucian is unaware of this until he discovers that one of the films has gone viral and realizes that Caroline is to blame. After destroying the mirror out of rage, Lucian reveals that he knows how to harm her. Caroline still throws her weight around, though, and accuses Chadwick of sexual misbehavior. Before she clarifies that she would never do that, he believes Cece is to blame for this. After talking to Beatrice, Cece learns that the complaint was about more than simply kissing, it was about X. Caroline, in the meantime, goes up to Beatrice and suggests that they work together to eliminate Lucian, the real predator, in this situation. This is undoubtedly a shift in attitude, but Caroline's influence is somewhat to blame. Blaze, who is under fire for embezzling money and blaming Lucian, is likewise attempting to avoid trouble here. He makes an unsuccessful attempt to persuade Scott and Blandsman to support him and place the blame on the man. Blaze visits the congressman to try to resolve the situation since he has nowhere else to go. In particular, by extorting him on Scott's sexual orientation. The problem is that Scott has previously disclosed everything, and his father has fully accepted his sexual orientation, even offering to pay for it and handle the books. In addition to removing Blaze's facade of innocence, this one deed thoroughly discredits him and paints him as an opportunistic idiot.
Do you know Lucian?
I wouldn't lie to you.
In pain, but he's really just a bad
Person, and that's the truth.
Just another thumbnail, then why didn't you do it?
Okay, Annie, don't listen to him.
The closer you get to her, the worse she's gonna have no idea, Caroline.
No. The insolence that I'm up against.
Cece.
My mother told me.
Everybody's gone.
A predator. Maybe even thousands. The point is.
Oh. What can I do for you, Moni?
I am your rush chair. I am your.
Even when Blaze attempts to argue his point back at the dorm, Scott is prepared to break off contact. Blaze mentions how he has always suffered and how hard he has been working for money. Sadly, it fails, and he is compelled to leave the college. However, he gives Blandsman, whom he has been torturing all season, a good response just before he does. In order to save Lucian from being implicated, he also removes his book. During all of this, Caroline is already there when Lucian arrives to visit Annie. By bringing up Lucian's recent actions and his skill as a great manipulator, she manipulates Annie. In the end, Lucian chooses to keep Annie at a distance since he thinks he can't defeat Caroline, or attempt to keep her from being destroyed. At some point, he says they should avoid him and that he doesn't care. After Lucian departs, Caroline tells Cece that they are great friends. Cece pledges to always be at Caroline's side and to do all in her power to support her. The ladies, including Annie, suddenly make their commitment to Delta Phi on the night of the promise. In the following events of the ceremony, Annie and Cece discuss the past.
Do you have any information?
Appeared along with the link.
It's for the best. Is this still about your professor? You love this part. Match.
House rules.
The old school tennis coach is that Adrian guy we've been hearing about. Additionally, Caroline is said to have lost her purity to Adrian. Annie begins to question if Caroline is truly a good friend, though. When Beatrice learns that Caroline was the one who filed the complaint, talking to her simply serves to confirm that. Lucian, on the other hand, goes over to watch Claudia hook up with the two. He plans to use the entire recording against his sister. He really tells her about it before riding out into the sunset. Or, well, until classes resume. Number 6.
Previously.
You have an employee who failed to kill.
Landman Season 1 Episode 4 The Sting of Second Chances. In Landman Episode 4, The Sting of Second Chances, Tommy must face some difficult family realities, while Angela must accept her discontent. When Tommy and his group were last seen in Landman Episode 3, he was in serious danger for playing down the plane theft. Various forces were pressuring Monty to hold his landman accountable. In addition, Tommy's unruly ex-wife Angela had arrived in town, consuming alcohol and having a wild time. The focus of Episode 4 shifts to how Ainsley and Angela's gender identity causes problems for the males in their lives. While Tommy is his route to his questioning about the plane theft, Nate is worried about the women exercising in the living room while unclothed. He is being prosecuted because he failed to notify the police that the plane had been stolen, causing a truck to smash into it when it was parked on the road for a drug drop, killing many persons. Rebecca, the attorney for M-Tex, however, turns out to be well worth the investment. She swiftly dismisses the prosecution counsel at the meeting, claiming that they made misogynistic comments and wasted everyone's time when Tommy told the FAA about the theft and that the truck shouldn't have been on a private road when it crashed. She insists that they give up the lawsuit after tearing apart the other attorneys, and they grudgingly comply. Tommy asks her out for drinks since he thinks she's a great approach. Soon afterwards, Tommy and Rebecca argue the morality of a local sex worker in the pub, continuing their dispute. Rebecca, however, gradually begins to comprehend him when he describes what it's like to have an oil bust in a place like this, when everyone loses everything. Uninterested, Ainsley and Angela try to enter the country club but are denied entry due to a private event. They then take a car to the same pub where Tommy and Rebecca are sipping beer at the moment. Across the bar, Angela sees them as Tommy tells Rebecca about Monty Miller's background and how he became wealthy after growing up in a trailer park. It is evident that she intends to cause problems. Ainsley and Angela approach, and before long, Angela insults Rebecca and extends an invitation for her to join them for supper.
The private kind.
Cooper is working through the night at the oil well with his new crew in order to prepare the well for the morning. When Antonio's palm is crushed on the mechanics, though, mayhem ensues for everyone. Manuel and Cooper rush to his aid, but he faints before they can lower him. Antonio is subsequently lifted by Cooper all the way down the well, and Dale quickly takes him to the hospital. In Antonio's place, Cooper is sent up to feed the line in the pine since the lads have to finish the well by dawn. Angela is recounting to Ainsley and Rebecca back at the bar how Tommy once gave her tickets to a George Strait concert as a surprise. Although it's a lovely recollection, the occasion turns sour when Angela breaks down in tears and informs them that they lost all they owned just after the markets plummeted and the oil crisis occurred. She informs them that she truly means everything. Unexpectedly uneasy, Tommy excuses himself from the table. Ainsley informs Rebecca that Tommy dislikes discussing the bust as Angela sobs. Rebecca offers to take the women home in her car. Rebecca questions Angela on the drive back about why she feels envious of Tommy now that they aren't married. Angela defends herself by telling Rebecca that there's nothing you could do about it if she were to have an affair with her partner. She also informs her that Rebecca isn't Tommy's style and that he needs tragedy to feel like a man.
Fine son of a bitch until he had calluses on. The kids, you were too, I think. We're in Lubbock. Tommy says the poke.
Honey, don't say.
And he says, put it on, not going to Mexico. Or event. 3 weeks later, the markets crashed. And I do mean everything.
On Uber? I can give you a ride. I guess he wouldn't.
Nate is still up late when Tommy gets home, negotiating compensation for Louis' family in order to avert a lawsuit. Then he discovers an angry Ainsley on the couch. She is a quitter, she notes. She leaves you when the market crashes. However, Tommy supports Angela because he understands her. Nevertheless, Ainsley assures Tommy that she will always be there for him, regardless of the state of the market. In relation to Angela, he then enters his bedroom and discovers her sobbing in bed. Tommy informs her that they had a horrible marriage, but she still regrets quitting it. Even if that may be the case, Angela nevertheless informs him that she intends to divorce her present spouse. Following some persuasion and begging on her part, Tommy consents to their reconciliation. When Ainsley enters the kitchen the following morning, half-dressed, she frightens Nate. She responds that the only clothing she packed were ones to entice her lover when Tommy advises her to put some on. Ainsley is thrilled when Angela comes down and they figure out that they are dating again. Before Tommy leaves for the well, the three give each other a effed up hug. Fortunately, everything's up and running smoothly, and Boss told Tommy how much Cooper helped to finish it. After informing Monty on the phone that everything is functioning well now, Tommy approaches his kid and tells him he must come home to see his mother. The news of Cooper's parents' reconciliation doesn't make him nearly as pleased as Ainsley does. Cooper receives a call from Elvio's wife, Ariana, as Tommy departs. She's upset and invites him to visit. He says yes even though he knows it would land him in serious problems with her cousins.
Who's this? Anything I can do?
That for me?
Number 5.
You shaved your head.
I'm on my watch.
He was blackmailing.
It was. I'm calling you.
Sistas Season 8 Episode 7 Game Recognizes Game. Following Robin's presentation of photos showing her, Gary, and his bodyguard having an altercation the same day he was stabbed, Fatima is forced to come clean. He thinks Fatima went over there to bring up Zach's investment or Gary's blackmailing of Andy. She has 2 reasons, to put it another way. Because of his private investigator, he also possesses her firearm. The authorities would place Andy lower on the suspect list if Robin turned over the proof. To avoid giving investigators the evidence, he asks her to play ball with Hayden. Robin is deadly like this. Additionally, he must keep in mind that he has just as many motivations as a person. Zach informs Fatima at home that Michael said the initial words. The topic of Karen and her having 2 children from 2 separate baby dads somehow comes up in the conversation. Fatima recommends that Aaron and Zach don "Who's Your Daddy" t-shirts. Bad. She makes fun of Karen's triplets as well. She tells Zach that Robin offered her the rest of the day off when he asks why she's coming home so early, but she doesn't elaborate on what transpired at work. Rather, they head upstairs for some typical Zatima X. We find out at the hospital that Gary was administered a substance that causes seizures, which is essentially heroin on the street.
The 80s girls group sold company and turned it into a billionaire.
That was her, yes.
I see.
And the rest is...
Wrong.
It's nothing. Just
out the supply closet until I hear y'all finish.
For what?
She's pretty shaken up, but
So long.
police think we...
Trying to determine that.
Try hard.
The doctor is being threatened by Hudson. Agent Watt visits Andy at her home in the meantime to inform her that Gary was the victim of another attempted murder. When Andy learns that he is still alive, she feels relieved. Shortly after her visit, he informs her that heroin was discovered in his system. Robin enters just in time to stop him from dragging her violently to the station. Andy collapses into Robin's arms as Agent Watt departs, and the two nearly kiss. Andy finds herself in a predicament once more. What became of the harsh, forceful Andy who once had to reason with Penelope? Andy restrains herself and prevents Robin from making jokes. Robin apologizes for being unsuitable, but Andy reminds them both that they are friends and that they are more than just clients and attorneys. Andy texts the girls to come over to her apartment immediately after the near kiss. All the sisters are coming in for another scene. Rich and Sabrina reconcile in the restaurant, but she wants to know why he initiated the altercation. He confides in her that he is anxious about the fertility consultation. She offers to accompany him to the rendezvous. Even though Danny is still hung up on the management program and wants her independence, Tony accuses her of leaving the restaurant like a whiny kid. Men have wanted to alter her all of her life. The other airport employees are noticing what's happening at her kiosk, but things are beginning to become touch sexual.
I'm sorry. More than just boss. We are...
Okay. Barnes I fell in love with if you could. You will.
Stabbing. He's such an insane human being.
We went to call it off, but when she didn't, we went so humiliating.
Why?
When Rich calls to say he can't do it, things take a turn for the worst. Sabrina contacts Danny to confirm that she will be attending Andy's place. The visual aids of the 1990s are the issue, not sperm donation. In order to make him daydream and chat nasty, Sabrina phones him. Rich ends up painting the walls, which creates a complicated scenario. In front of our better judgment, sisters are turning into soft porn. While Miss Marie is moving about the salon, Miss Lisa enters. What happened with the girl with the bald borders is explained by Pam and Karen. Karen informs her mother that Gary's stabbing has led to questions being asked about her.
No, we've been pretty busy. Mocktails out of paint and sip. Don't be late. Okay. Rich, we got this far. Are you in the exam room?
Baby, it's worse than I thought. The like monthly kind of boy, you know.
She is usually comforted by Miss Lisa. She is always able to say the appropriate thing. Karen's discussion of the double standard, that a white woman's circumstances are acceptable yet a black woman is branded as promiscuous or a hoe for having 2 baby daddies, is a wonderful scene. I could understand how ladies in comparable circumstances may benefit from this scene's message. Andy informs the girls at Andy's house that Fatima would be visiting, but she doesn't show up after she and Zach have a bath. Since she and Fatima are in a better place, Karen isn't angry. She also updates the girls on routes to riches and the current happenings at the salon. Andy, meanwhile, informs the girls that she nearly got kissed by Robin. A phone call interrupts them as Karen asks whether she wants Robin to kiss her. Andy answers the phone when the girls leave her alone. It's none other than the return of Gary the cockroach.
I think I'm losing my man. He did what?
Number 4. Earth Abides Season 1 Episode 1 Alone. Ish is at the heart of Todd Komarnicki's Earth Abides, which is based on George R. Stewart's book. Earth Abides' first episode begins with Ish writing in his notebook, drinking coffee, ignoring his mother's phone call, and then leaving his cabin in the woods to explore the mountains for intriguing rocks since, well, he's a geologist. He gets bitten by the rattlesnake as he is examining these stones since he is blind to its presence.
Gosh!
In a hurry, he slips the phone into a crack when he attempts to dial 911. With his pocket knife in hand, he cuts close to the snake's bite site and attempts to extract the venom by sucking. Ish dashes back to his cabin and falls onto his bed as the chills set in. He continues to drift in and out of awareness. To check if someone is in the cabin, forest rangers or an emergency services representative show up at Ish's house. They simply depart as Ish is unable to reply. Not entering the property to do a comprehensive investigation seems strange, but I'm not sure what the procedure is for inspecting a location when the owner's car is in the driveway and the door is most likely unsecured, because I don't believe Ish was in the state to lock the door behind him. That turns out to be a kind of blessing in disguise, though, as a deadly virus destroys the world around Ish while he recovers in his cabin from the consequences of the snake bite. Ish recognizes what has occurred when he eventually starts to act normally again and leaves his cabin to take supplies to the local town. He discovers rotting corpses all over the place and learns that the US government has been suspended. When he arrives at his parents' house in a hurry, he discovers that they have passed away. He attempts to understand this new normal while burying them in the backyard. Following the episode's somewhat successful opening act, we see Ish traveling across the town and discovering dead bodies all over the place. He visits the retail establishment to replenish his supplies and get weapons and ammo to ensure his life. When he chooses to travel across the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge to check for survivors in the city, he discovers that it is blocked off and his automobile cannot pass. He decides to drive all the way to Las Vegas. All the lights are on in the vacation city since it has power, but no one is there. When Ish visits one of the hotels and discovers that no one is there, he walks about completely nude and takes advantage of the amenities. He then encounters Anne and Milton, 2 individuals who have miraculously survived the end of the world. They simply happen to be in the same location at the most inconvenient time. They are not married. Ish is kept up to date on everything he has missed by Milton, who has handily taped all of the news for the previous few weeks. A virus that resembled COVID-19 apparently swept over the world, but this time, neither treatment or vaccination was effective, and victims fell like flies. Anne claims that she, Milton, and Ish have survived due to some sort of unexplained immunity, But she does not consider this a blessing because she must endure the grief of knowing that all of her loved ones have passed away. Anne and Milton have given up on such dreams and wish to end their lives by suicide after exhausting the hotel's resources, but Ish wants to leave the area and look for survivors throughout the nation. Since Ish isn't quite that pessimistic yet, he chooses to leave the property in Las Vegas as well, even though they are more than delighted to include him in their plan. We hear 2 gunshots as he leaves, indicating that Milton first shot Anne and then himself.
Told me 3 times a day, but people were getting sick, yes, but
My daughters die on Zoom.
and there's nowhere left.
No way.
See which nation fell that day. Or you sleep.
Any helps.
If Ish hadn't been involved in their life, it's doubtful that Milton and Anne would have committed suicide. I'm not entirely sure why Ish's presence encouraged Milton and Anne to expedite their death plot after exhausting all of Las Vegas's resources. Although I suppose Milton and Anne had already dealt with and moved on from all of Ish's feelings, seeing him go through the anguish and hopelessness they had previously experienced made him less determined to live longer than they had really desired. Furthermore, Ish was devastated by the deaths of these 2 individuals, despite the fact that they were complete strangers. He attempts suicide by speeding through traffic, but he abandons the plan when he spots a dog in the middle of the road and chooses to start again with his dog companion at his parents' house.
But what you want, gang?
If you want it. But I'm here now. Sweet boy.
How fucking lucky are you?
In essence, he returns to school and reads everything there is to know about life. He keeps himself occupied by exercising, maintaining a nutritious diet, taking care of his dog, and practicing self-control while driving his automobile in circles. In this way, an entire year goes past. However, Ish sees smoke on the horizon at the conclusion of Earth Abides, Episode 1. That may only indicate that there is another survivor nearby. Why it took Ish so long to realize that there are other people around is beyond me. Now that all moral boundaries have been thrown to the wind because of the apocalypse, perhaps the other survivor was attempting to blend in so as not to draw the notice of other survivors who could turn to immoral behavior. Only after they were aware of their isolation did they start to relax.
I read once that we... But what happened? Take root in the space between hope.
Number 3. Territory Season 1 Episode 6. Emily, Anna Torv sits by herself as Territory's conclusion opens, reflecting on the fate of Susie, Philippa Northeast, who is buried. Graham, Michael Dorman and Colin, Robert Taylor attempt to stop Emily from murdering the animal. She walks away without firing it. Graham later advises Marshall Lawson, Sam Corlett to give up alcohol. He is adamant that they will overcome this together. Marshall leaves in his car. Colin tells Graham that he must take care of him. According to Colin, they ought to shoot the bull. However, Graham thinks that's for Emily. Lockie, Joe Klotchek is trying to get cheered up by Sandra, Sarah Wiseman. She feels that Susie was their last chance, and now that she's gone, she's gone. Lockie implies that his mother wishes to take advantage of such vulnerability. Susie was the complete antithesis of his mother, which is why he adored her. Sandra is adamant that she would have destroyed him. She cautions him to use caution. Keely Redford, Tuli Narkle and Uncle Bryce, Hamilton Morris discuss the agreement with Sandra. The route passes past both a religious site and that sorry place, which worries him. Bryce warns her that they will be in serious trouble if she doesn't close the road. Marshall tries to start a fight in the pub. Marshall is prevented from being severely beaten by the appearance of Shani Kennedy, Kyla Day. He shares Susie's story with her. Shani claims that although she isn't back with Rich, she was purchasing a bottle for the 2 of them. She's going on. Marshall acknowledges that he believed she was dead. They start kissing. Emily informs Hank, played by Dan Wiley, that she is unable to return to Marianne. Hank advises her to disguise herself and forget her identity. She deceived herself into believing that her daughter was the reason behind all she did. But Hank doesn't think it was for her. It was Emily's goal, he claims. Staying genuine is the only way out of this situation right now. She should take the station, Hank advises. Susie wouldn't have wanted it, according to Emily. Colin acknowledges that they need petrol. According to Graham, they must remove the cows from the nation. He finds out that there are fires being started along the eastern fence line. Rich runs away from his companion as he spots a helicopter. In the end, they abandon them. Colin fears that they will now continue to come from them. He asserts that they must use all of their resources to retaliate against Miller. Colin informs the chief minister over the phone that Miller has gone too far. What can he do? Asks the chief minister. Marshall discusses the Stormbirds with Shani. Since Rich will be returning tonight, Shani believes he should go. To inform Campbell, J. Ryan, of what transpired, Rich goes back to him. Campbell finds out that they will begin looking into his possible cross-branding. He fears he won't be able to sell any of his animals if they attempt to revoke his brand. He could murder the Lawsons for him, Rich says. Inquiring about the road on Marianne, Keeley goes up to Sandra. Sandra claims that the only area she may drive through is now considered a holy site. Keeley informs her about the hallowed, sorry place. In the 1990s, the community attempted to get it acknowledged, but Colin Lawson put an end to the concept. He settled several old men's debts. Sandra promises to reimburse them. Uncle Bryce won't accept it, so Keeley tells her to relocate the road. Sandra believes that she is being taken advantage of. Keeley tells her that if she messes with them, they'll have a serious problem. Desi is informed that the cattle are near the river and that Graham gave him permission to be at Marianne Station. Desi locates NTMS employees. He makes an attempt to escape them. He gets shot at by one of the men, but it misses. The other person phones the boss to report an issue. In order to inform Sandra that the Lawsons are attempting to bury him, Campbell meets with her. Sandra says a change of governance is necessary. At the escarpment, she wants him to be available to defend her soldiers. Marianne Station will belong to Campbell once they leave. Sandra just does not want him to inquire about her affairs. To inform Hank and Emily that his mother has reopened a gold mine on Marianne Station, Lockie visits them. The mining is a front for uranium, and she wants to build the facilities. Lockie clarifies that she will be transferring uranium abroad after enriching it. The property can be used to conceal, store, and bury radioactive waste. No one will purchase their livestock if that occurs. Emily is informed by Lockie that she must keep Marianne Station for Susie. Marshall is awakened by Rich using a firearm. Shani discovers him gone. Rich takes Marshall somewhere while puffing on a pipe. He confesses his love for Shani to Marshall. He also thinks Marshall let him down. They're heading to their destinies, according to Rich. Graham and Colin are informed about the ANFO soldiers by Nolan and Desi. They're minors, Graham understands. According to Uncle Bryce, he instructed Keeley to change that path. Sandra is going to blow it up, according to Nolan. When Emily shows there, she informs them of Sandra's plans regarding the garbage. Bryce is asked what he wants by Colin. Everything around the river, Uncle says. There won't be any more closed gates, Graham agrees. To handle the problem, they dash out. The men get the bombs ready in the meanwhile. Rich attacks Colin as soon as he enters. Emily and Graham dash to the cave. Emily acknowledges that she left Daniel to perish even though she intended to frighten him. She needs his forgiveness for Susie, but she isn't pleading for it. She can now move on from that, Graham informs her. Rich returns home and locates the safe. He requests the key to that item from Marshall and Colin. Colin is informed by Rich that he must pay the family's obligations. At the cave, Graham talks to Campbell. Graham thinks Colin will arrive. Until Colin informs Rich that the key is in the top drawer, Rich keeps torturing Rich. To halt the miners, Nolan and the others show up. They should put down their guns, Campbell orders. From a distance, Elliot points toward Campbell. Colin instructs Rich to grab the contents of the safe and leave. What's in the smaller safe? Asks Rich. If Colin does not give him the code, he threatens to murder Marshall. He hits him in the hand or arm and thrashes him. Rich is informed by Colin that he will open it. Marshall is horrified to discover what is inside the safe when he unlocks it. He pulls it back. He informs Rich that he will have to take their lives. Elliot shoots one of Campbell's soldiers to death. Bullets start to fly. Marshall and Colin are able to seize Rich and beat him. They shoot Uncle Bryce. When Shani gets inside, he attempts to stop Marshall from striking Rich. She assures him that he is not a murderer. In the leg, Emily shoots Campbell. Colin murders Rich by shooting him. He attempts to assassinate Shani, but Marshall intervenes. Colin thinks they have been manipulating him all along. When Campbell presses the button, the cave explodes. Campbell is shot in the shoulder by Nolan. Colin seems likely to let Shani survive. Emily spots Elliot. Marshall declares his love for Shani. She claims that she is returning home. Before departing, Shani requests that he take the jewelry. The bull that killed Susie is taken by Emily. She doesn't kill it even if she wants to. Sandra claims that Campbell wasn't following her instructions when Nolan contacted her. Singapore is her destination. Sandra maintains that if Campbell lives, there will be repercussions. She is proposing Nolan to be the Cattlemen's Federation's acting president. Sandra advises Nolan to avoid becoming sidetracked by trivial politics. When Uncle Bryce shows up, he is okay. I don't believe there, Marshall informs Emily. Colin hands Emily the key and says the house is hers and Graham's. Elliot brings Daniel's horse over to Colin. He hands the bullet casings to him. Number 2.
Unsere Feinde wegnehmen wollen.
Sie steht dir ausgezeichnet für den Kaiser. Du vergiss.
Eure Majestät, die Erzherzogin.
Die Uniform. Ist mitgenommen.
The Empress Season 2 Episode 6 All We Can Do. A flashback of a young Franz asking the Cardinal why God permits war opens the Empress Season 2 Episode 6. When Franz was younger, he believed that by donning the uniform of a soldier, he would eventually fight with them. But Sophie told the young prince that rather than going to the front with the soldiers, he was to order them to fight for Austria. The birth of the heir is now being celebrated by the royal family. Elizabeth introduces the young boy to his older sister, Fienchen, on the day of his baptism. Fienchen remains in the hearts of Elizabeth and Franz even after all these years. Elizabeth hardly permits Sophie to approach the young prince, suggesting that he is likewise cautious about her. Leontine also sends Elizabeth a letter, although it lacks an address.
Cavour will am Erwachsenen.
Den Truppen aus dem Piemont. Rebellen zu beenden. Tut das?
Neapel weiterführt. Die Sizilianer müssen den...
Sehr wohl.
Waren Sie schon einmal in Wien? Nur Bayern. Das ist Donna Nina. Der König.
Ist doch so.
Menschen essen nur Macaroni.
Later, the Empress informs Alexander that Leontine was pregnant when she departed, and Elizabeth finds out via Charlotte. The future of Austria remains uncertain despite the positive news of the next heir's birth. According to Buell, the rebels in Lombardy-Venetia are becoming more powerful. Garibaldi's support is growing, and Sophie and Franz are planning to win over additional Italian areas. In order to establish a political connection, the two are hoping that Elizabeth would consent to marry off her younger sister, Mimi, to the Prince of Sicily. At first, Elizabeth opposes the notion and makes an effort to dissuade her sister. But Sophie also tries her hardest to persuade Mimi to get married. Every night, Garibaldi and the rebels begin to riot. Gyulai maintains that they must declare war on Piedmont when Buell reports that Piedmont is amassing troops along the border. Despite Alexander's objections to the proposal, Franz gives Cavour 3 days to turn himself in and cease aiding the Lombardian rebels. He says he will be open to negotiations if they give up. Meanwhile, Marie persuades Maximilian that Franz is playing a practical joke on him because he always intended for him to fail. She issues her own ultimatum to him. To speak with Franz, the two go to the palace. After Austrian forces seize the guns during a disturbance on the Piedmont border, Franz discovers at the palace that Napoleon is smuggling military equipment to the rebels.
Lisez. De lui.
Auf Frankreich. Ich erwarte Ihre Rücktrittserklärung bis heute Abend. Das reicht mir, Negin.
Franz ultimately realizes that he launched war on both France and Piedmont. He fires Gyulai because he is upset over being taken by surprise. After discovering the true reason for Buell's determination to start a war, he also fires him. Franz must inevitably go to war at the same time as Cavor refuses to surrender. Napoleon, predictably, is content and is ready to bring Austria to its knees. When Napoleon outwitted the Austrian army, more than 6,000 troops were killed and several others were maimed. Elizabeth is demoralized by the troops' suffering when she visits them in the hospital. To offer the people hope, she persuades her sister to consent to the political marriage. Maximilian is demoted to viceroy by Franz. According to Marie, Franz is attempting to portray Maximilian as a failure. Marie offers him a warning not to join his family after they quarrel over it. However, Alexander resigns after finding out Leontine was expecting a child. He informs Franz that in order to remain in his service, he must atone for his transgressions before it is too late. Although Franz reluctantly lets him leave, he is moved by Alexander's bravery in confessing his transgressions.
Wird diesen Krieg ein Sieg,
weil doch allmächtig ist.
Jeder andere Mensch.
Wir verlieren jeden Tag Tausende. Egal, was sie sich vorzuwerfen, ich erlaube. Ich werde.
Franz chooses to enlist in the military after weeks of suffering a crushing defeat at the hands of Napoleon and Piedmont rebels. This revelation shakes Elizabeth to his core, yet he implores her to help him. The pair present a unified front when Franz tells his family, and Sophie accuses Elizabeth of being responsible for Franz's choice. Franz believes that he is a phony for asking his soldiers to defend the nation while he is staying in the palace. He wants to demonstrate that, like Napoleon, he is not a coward and that he is capable of serving on the front lines. In the event that Franz is harmed, Maximilian volunteers to stay behind and take his place. Franz clarifies, though, that Elizabeth and his mother will take control until his kid reaches adulthood. Maximilian is furious and departs with his wife right away. As the season comes to a close, Franz bids his loved ones farewell and leaves for the front. Sophie puts on a brave face as she bids him farewell, but as soon as he departs, she starts crying. She fears that she didn't do enough to preserve her son and the kingdom, and that all of her hard work was in vain. Elizabeth consoles her when she places the blame on him. The two ladies embrace as the show comes to a close, acknowledging their sacrifices for the kingdom and wishing for the best.
Dieses Reich nie wird wahr.
Weitermachen.
Number 1.
Hour to get to you.
As a friend, don't read too much into it.
It's nothing.
Tater!
Yellowstone Season 5 Episode 12 Counting Coup. As the Taylor Sheridan show nears its unavoidable conclusion, Yellowstone is experiencing some grim turns with just a few episodes remaining. The Paramount drama could be at odds with you if you felt that Case, Luke Grimes, Beth, Kelly Riley, and Rip Cole Hauser had endured enough following the death of John Dutton, Kevin Costner. After Counting Coup, in Season 5, everything takes a tragic turn, and the Dutton Ranch will never be the same. The opening scene of Counting Coup shows the Dutton cowboys in Texas and Montana getting their start in the day. Colby Mayfield, Denham Richards confesses his love for Theta, Jennifer Landon during their phone conversation. As they join their different costumes, she reciprocates the feeling despite their separation.
Get what we can, right?
But you are one of the best at this.
I ain't gonna fire you, Jimmy. John Dutton passed away.
Sorry.
Rip shows in and announces his plan to sell some bulls and auction off some horses as Lloyd, Forrie J. Smith and Carter, Finn little talk about the future of the ranch. Rip thinks he's attempting to rescue it, but Lloyd struggles with the news, wondering whether they're going out of business. He clarifies, Uncle Sam wants his pound of flesh, and we don't want to give it to him in land. Travis Wheatley, Sheridan, who spent time training Jimmy Herdstrom, Jefferson White to become a horse trainer, is the first person Rip calls. Travis is asked by Rip to assist him in selling a sizable portion of the Dutton Ranch's horses for top dollar, something he prefers to accomplish properly rather than at a last-minute fire sale. However, when Rip asks Travis to inform Jimmy of John Dutton's passing, things get a little more difficult because Rip knows that Jimmy had a unique bond with the landowner. Jimmy was one of the only marked cowboys John ever permitted to leave Yellowstone. Jimmy, who is devastated by the news, is instructed to take a week off to enjoy time with his wife, Emily, Catherine Kelly, but he immediately resumes his horseback riding. Detective Dillard, Rory Cochrane interviews Jamie, Wes Bentley back in Bozeman following the death of Sarah Atwood, Dawn Olivieri in the past episode. When Jamie inquires about Sarah's death, Dillard, who last appeared in Helena, leaving us confused about where his jurisdiction truly resides, informs him that it appears that Sarah was targeted. However, the Attorney General becomes quite protective when the investigator asks Jamie if he may look through some of Sarah's belongings. Jamie sobs, "You're treating me like I'm a suspect." "No, I wasn't," Dillard answers. "But I will now." The adoptive Dutton has hurried upstairs to destroy legal paperwork from Sarah's luggage as Dillard departs to obtain a search warrant for Jamie's house, potentially revealing his perceived conflict with Market Equity's airport project. When Beth returns to the Dutton ranch, Monica, Kelsey Asbill prepares breakfast for everyone and swears she will never again enter that dining room. They dine in the kitchen instead. However, a call from Dillard interrupts Case as Monica begs Tate, Breck and Merrill to get his father. The younger Dutton is not surprised when the investigator informs Case that Jamie was acting quite suspiciously. Case discloses that Jamie could be involved in the murders of both his father and Sarah, and Dillard informs Case that Jamie is presently inside the blast radius. Case responds, "He put himself there." Case then dials Cade McPherson, Jake McLaughlin, who provides him with the residential address of Grant Horton, Matt Gerald. It's obvious that Case has strategies in place to deal with the murder of his father. However, Case quickly shows Beth a news piece about Sarah's passing before those preparations can be implemented. The police are circling Jamie, he says. "This is all gonna come to a head real quick." Beth responds, "He will ruin this family's name to save his own," requesting that Case leave Jamie in her care. Case then dials Cade McPherson, Jake McLaughlin, who provides him with the residential address of Grant Horton, Matt Gerald. It's obvious that Case has strategies in place to deal with the murder of his father. However, Case quickly shows Beth a news piece about Sarah's passing before those preparations can be implemented. The police are circling Jamie, he says. "This is all gonna come to a head real quick." Beth responds, "He will ruin this family's name to save his own," requesting that Case leave Jamie in her care. Get ready for more sorrow if you felt that the Duttons had already experienced enough this season. Things become a little shady in Montana when Carter checks on one of the horses in the stable while Rip and Lloyd are ranching on the Yellowstone, and the ranch workers down in Texas continue to pick up their animals for sale. Carter tries to assist as the wild animal throws aside its water bowl, but the animal quickly surrounds him. They devise a strategy to get Carter out of there once Colby locates him. While Carter rushes out, Colby will enter and divert the horse's attention. Carter manages to escape, but the horse tramples Colby underfoot. Colby is trampled, and things quickly get violent, requiring Carter to dispose of the horse dead. However, because Colby was slain, it's too little, too late. Carter is devastated by the time Rip and Lloyd locate him, standing over Colby's lifeless body and blaming himself. "It's not your fault," Rip informs him. "If it's anyone's fault, it's mine." Rip phones Ryan, Ian Bowen right away, and wants him to tell Theta about Colby's passing rather than hiding it from the rest of his group. It doesn't go well when Ryan, Colby's best buddy, breaks the news to him. As the thunderous Yellowstone soundtrack erupts, Theta lets forth a cry. "Nothing's okay, Ethan," the Yellowstone foreman responds when Ethan Lee asks Rip if everything is alright. No more. Carter is left to grieve while Rip, Lloyd, and Ethan load Colby's body onto the truck and drive away. In Texas, Theta, Ryan, and the others pack up their horses and head to Montana, each of them grieving in their own unique manner. "It was quick," Ryan says to Theta. "He never saw it coming." Theta responds quite differently, but he and the rest of the crew find solace in the fact that Colby was spared. When she says, "He's a cowboy, suffering's the job, I just wish he would have suffered a little longer, so I could say goodbye." After Colby passes away, Case and Tate explore the Dutton family cemetery, which is also the location of Case and Monica's second son's burial and where John will be laid to rest. "This where you want to be buried?" Tate asks his father, but Case says he wants to be buried wherever Tate is and that it is up to him to decide. Case says, "Here is not our home," in closing. Not anymore. Case swiftly disagrees with Tate's statement that he doesn't want to bury his father anyplace. "Well, I sure hope you do, son, because I couldn't survive the alternative." At that moment, Case receives a call authorizing him to proceed with his clandestine mission. This week after Colby's passing, Counting Coup gives us a glimpse of Beth Dutton's more vulnerable side. In response to Lloyd's request, she packs everything Colby owns save his hat as she enters the bunkhouse in the hopes of gathering some of his belongings for his bereaved mother. Theta, according to the elderly cowboy, will need something to cling to. When Beth visits Carter later, the child is having a hard time accepting his role in Colby's demise. He has no need to blame himself, she tells him as she cares for him. Colby decided on something. Beth observes, "He saw you in trouble and decided to help you. And I'm sure glad he did." Without his family, Beth advises her surrogate kid not to struggle with this. Telling her, "I don't got a family," she responds, "Sure you do." Beth discovers her spouse in the main home as she keeps going around the property. Beth makes a fire and instructs Rip to toss something since she has experienced enough sorrow herself. She tells him, "I'm not gonna watch you bottle this up all night," since she knows he's putting the blame on himself. A glass thrown into the flames produces a satisfying eruption, but it doesn't ease Rip's suffering. Beth informs him, "You know, when I find myself in the position of therapist, this family's pretty f-ked," before she asks him what he needs to get through this. "All I ever need is time and you, Beth," he acknowledges publicly. "It's a dangerous job, and one day it'll kill me too." I hope that doesn't hint at what will happen to Rip in the conclusion. On that night, Monica hopes Case would not go, but he gets ready for whatever activity he and Cade have planned. "What I'm doing isn't best for the ranch," Case asserts to her. "It's for you, it's for us." Although he won't reveal his exact intentions to her, he does clarify that his actions here are connected to the vision he previously saw that signaled the death of his family. "I can now see it. I know what has to be done. Have faith in me," Case adds. Monica's response, "I've always believed in you," Case, compels him to make a commitment to return to them. Retorting, "You have my word," Monica prepares breakfast for the family the following morning, but Case is not there when Beth shows up to inquire about him. Grant Horton is coaching his daughter's soccer match in Texas when we cut down. In contrast to the character we encountered in Desire Is All You Need, Grant seems like a typical family guy and parent. Case, however, is more knowledgeable. Grant is forced to drive after Case gets into the car with his daughter and holds a pistol at her. "Do you know who I am?" Case queries. Case makes it apparent that he is aware that Grant bears some of the blame for his father's passing, despite Grant's best efforts to deny it. For what he did to John, he tells him that he should murder him in front of his family, but he refuses. Although Case makes it apparent that he is free, he decides to let him and his family go for the time being. Case advises Grant to keep an eye on himself and get out of the car. When Case is picked up by Moses brings plenty. They refer to Case's activities as a counting coup, assuming the assassin received the message. We're excited to assist all our non-English speakers and viewers to learn English with movies. Every day, we upload new video episodes with a rewritten description of the movie or TV show. Just hit the third button on your right below titled CC to learn English with movies. And please, drop a like on this video. If you like this video, make sure to check out the OKTV Today's YouTube channel, where we have hundreds of videos just like this. If you want to see our newest episodes, make sure you subscribe and click on that bell to get notifications.